Hi, so I wanted to answer this question here. So, a lot of people ask this question about wanting to be a therapist or wanting to be a criminal psychologist. So, I just wanted to clarify, if you want to become a therapist, like a psychotherapist, that would be something that you would look up under the Board of Behavioral Sciences and look at the Board of Behavioral Sciences website in your state and look at the requirements to be a therapist. That's the licensing board that would grant you permission to be a therapist. That is how you should go about and find out what it would take to become one. Now, that board has nothing to do with being a psychologist. So, if you're interested in being a psychologist, you look at the Board of Psychology website in your state and look at the requirements. And the requirements are very different. The difference is that a psychologist is a doctor of psychology, and they're licensed under a different board, different requirements, and different educational requirements. And so there is no such thing as a criminal psychologist in the real world. They're called forensic psychologists. It's just like one of those terms we used to call maybe someone mentally retarded, but we don't anymore. We say they have an intellectual disability, right? So some of the language has changed. So while people may use certain terms, they really aren't terms that are used anymore. Now on television, you might hear those terms like a criminal psychologist, but I technically am a criminal psychologist, and I've been doing this for over 10 years, but I have never been called a criminal psychologist in criminal court because it would be inappropriate to call the people I see criminals. So I just want to clarify that. It's a question I get asked every day, but you don't refer to defendants or your clients or patients as criminals, even though they're in custody, or even though they're out on bail, or even though I'm doing sentencing recommendations for, say, a sex offender or a homicide case. So just want to clarify that, trying to change the language that we're using now. We're saying forensic psychologist. Forensics means in the court system. So I am a psychologist in the court system. Now, someone mentioned the other day they were so confused they don't see psychologists just sitting around in the court system. Well, I mean, no one's just sitting around in the court system. The court orders me to answer legal questions, and I do so, and I submit them in reports. So you don't need to see me, and I rarely need to go to court or testify. They are court-ordered psychological evaluations, and I do that at different various stages of the legal process. For insanity cases, I'll see them right after a homicide, and I'll assess their mental state. For competency, I see them later along in the legal process. Sentencing, even later in the legal process. And so if you are interested in working with defendants and being a forensic psychologist, you'd have to get your doctorate degree. A PsyD stands for Doctorate of Psychology. And if you get your Doctorate of Psychology, you would be a specialist in assessing and treating mental disorders. Not just mental disorders, personality disorders, and every disorder you can think of. So, one of the things that a forensic psychologist does is that I am an expert at assessments and diagnosing. So, some of the cases I do where there's really big legal outcomes, like maybe millions of dollars on the line for a civil case, the diagnosis is really important. Really important, right? It's the difference between winning and losing. It's the difference between having, trauma or some severe reaction or someone being a accused of malingering. So forensic psychologists do really thorough investigative work. They work with a lot of key players in the court system. I work with attorneys, the paralegals, everybody in between, basically, depending on what type of case I'm doing. But typically the system that I'm working with, whether it's the public defender's office or attorney's office, they get me the criminal documents, the medical records, and everything that I need to do my job. And I can do it all remotely right here. And as a forensic psychologist, a lot of people ask me, well, what it's like from day to day. I have 7 or so different contracts. I signed another one this week, so I have referrals coming in each week. And I get the court orders from different states. I'm licensed in 40 states, so I can take cases. I have new cases where I'm court appointed in Las Vegas, Nevada, new cases in Ohio, Florida, and elsewhere. So if you want to be a forensic psychologist, my tip to you, if you want to make it easy, you could download my ebook that is called How to Become a Forensic Psychologist, and I lay it out. And if you don't want to get your doctorate in forensic psychology, you could always stop at your master's degree and be a therapist. But you wouldn't be able to do the court-ordered work. The court-ordered work is just, it's much more serious outcomes, and that is the requirement they have to be an expert. Doctorate degree, licensed, and then you have to have experience and trust and be court appointed. And so in order to be court appointed, you really want to get experience your entire doctoral degree program, so that in your entire 5 years in that doctoral program, you're doing court-ordered things, which is what I did. So the day I got licensed was the day the court sent me my first case, but I was already doing court-ordered assessments for years leading up to that. So if that's something you want to do, you could also attend my webinar, a free webinar, November 8th. You can sign up in my stand store. So I offer this information because I want people to get accurate information and to stop diagnosing themselves off TikTok videos. All of it is wrong and garbage. And there's a lot of universities out there that aren't accredited. They're not real doctorate degrees, and they're fraudulent universities. They're getting sued, and people are getting a lot of misinformation out there, and it's sad to watch. If you truly want to do this, I'm just here to tell you how to do it, because I went through the process myself, and it's a lot of commitment, and it took me almost 15 years to do all the things that I need to do to get here. And so feel free to post your questions here. As a forensic psychologist, if I want to do therapy, I can. I do them in usually very extreme cases or court-ordered cases because I don't take insurance. So that's a huge difference between a therapist. Therapists usually take insurance. They can have their own license and have their own business. But they don't have the independence to do forensic assessments or evaluations or court-ordered things. So forensic psychologists typically wouldn't do therapy because it would pay like a quarter as much, or there would just be no need for a forensic psychologist to do therapy for the most part. If they're getting a lot bigger cases, you can't do both to the same client. That's like a conflict of interest. Like if I'm doing sentencing recommendation, I also don't do their therapy. You could do one or the other, but for the most part, if you're wanting to get into assessing defendants, then you may be ordered to do court-ordered therapy. I have done court-ordered therapy with individuals who had committed homicide, and I was there. I was their court-ordered evaluator. I did therapy with them, and it was